Before we get started, I just want to say thank you for a wonderful semester, opening my perspective and making me think in a new light, along with everyone else in the class. So I just want to say thank you for that. And now on to the main topic of tonight. So my question is going to be, is there anything we can clearly and distinctly perceive as true? So this is a very broad statement, which comes from the early 1600s, 1700s, I believe, where back in the day, everyone thought the world kind of revolved around them in a sense. And they until it was proven that the world in fact revolved around the sun, there was also arguments that is what we see now what's real, and how can we believe things from other people's lenses and other people's perspectives, because we personally can't see that, to where it opened up a whole new world of discussion, which started with Descartes, which a lot of philosophers really don't talk about, which I think is a very interesting topic. I have a quote from Descartes right here, which he says, "But if the mere fact that I can produce from my thought the idea of something entails that everything which I clearly and distinctly perceive to belong to that thing really does belong to it, is not this a possible basis for another argument to prove the existence of God?" Now, what this statement means isn't that he himself is claiming that he is a God, but in the sense that the perspective that every individual, since they thought the world revolved around them, that they had the justification to think they were a God, in the sense that, you only see from your two eyes and you only think with your frontal lobe, in a sense. So just this argument in itself kind of opened up a whole new theological world, where they kind of talk about kind of the different perspectives and kind of figuring out what's real, what's not, and what's our perception, and what that perception entails, in a sense. Uh, this was made very popular by Descartes during this time, when he talked about it's his nature to prove in any shape or number that property belongs to its nature, in a sense. That kind of, it's proof in the pudding that if you're able to think and see and touch and feel, that that thing does exist, in a sense. And I think this perspective's kind of like helped entail, the future generations of philosophers, that the very basic truths of like arithmetic and geometry, and even that, is the number two, if the algebraic equations really add up to what they say they were. And I think perception is kind of the most intriguing aspect of philosophy. I think another philosopher that talks about this relatively, like, roughly, is Nietzsche in Wales, and Gravity and Grace in Twilight of the Idols, where they kind of tell us about kind of the subjective nature of our perceptions, often shaped by our cultural constructs, to where it's not that our perceptions aren't whether real or fake, but whether they differ based on our kind of cultural perceptions. And then Gravity and Grace also tells us to like ponder about the different perceptions and spiritual forces that may kind of cloud our judgment, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or whatever religion you follow, or whether you grew up in Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, or Native American in the US. Kind of this kind of limited perspective and kind of lack of connection with other worlds and other people at a time limited your certain thought process. So from that perspective, I found it really interesting. I think that for me, perception is a very, very big thing. My view is that perception is everything and nothing at the same time. I think that I'm very big on philosophy, and I read a lot of Machiavelli, Kant, Dostoevsky, and I've just learned new perspectives on kind of what things can be. Like the argument that Kant had is that what he saw was the false premise that existence, uh, and predicate, kind of, it adds nothing, which is a new perspective in itself. That a lot of people used to say that you existed for God and to pray to God, where Kant argued that just like every other living organism, like whether a cow or a plant, we add nothing, we come from nothing, and we add nothing, and we leave with nothing, which is very true in a sense. My perspective more aligns with you are what you are perceived. Whether people think you're very smart, people think you're very handsome, people think you're funny, people think you're rich, people think you're poor. I think that, especially being in business and finance myself, that your image and your perception kind of go a long way. So whether it's wearing a nice watch or wearing a chain, kind of your perception kind of says a lot about you. That's why I think that your perception might not always be true, in a sense, because, well, if you see someone wearing a fake Rolex, You might think they come from money, even though you might not know it's fake. Or if you see someone driving a very nice car, you might not know their financial situation, but from just those kind of limited perceptions, you kind of jump to a conclusion. And it's perception like this that kind of makes you think, is everything perceived really true in a sense? Because I think that perception itself is just justified thought throughout the times. Like definitions are just something that someone gave to a couple hundred years before us. Just as definitions are ever changing and words are ever added, who's to say the first definitions are relatively true? Who's to say the integral kind of financial equations or algebraic equations are relative to what they say they were? I think that it's kind of interesting to view the world from a new perspective. I think that perception in itself kind of embodies your confidence in what you are, and it is what you make of it. So when asked, is anything we clearly and distinctively perceive is necessarily true? I think that kind of reflects on you and what your perspective is on what you make of it. I know it's not a very good answer, but I think that kind of answers everything. Thank you.